Are you even more ruthless than you used to be?
My son is out there somewhere, and I don't know what he's doing. I don't know how to help him. You can't.
From a screwball biopic about the man widely reckoned to be the most powerful vice president in US history to a movie about a real-life murder mystery in France. Welcome to France 24's weekly film show. I'm joined in the studio by our critic Lisa Nesselson. Hello, Lisa.
Louise.
Welcome to the show. And out in France this week is Vice, the new biopic of the former Vice President Dick Cheney. It traces his rise from intern during the Nixon administration to his time as George W. Bush's official deputy from 2001 to 2009. Dick Cheney is played by Christian Bale, who won the Golden Globe for Best Actor. And in his acceptance speech, he thanks Satan. Can you explain why?
Easily. You could make an argument for the Prince of Darkness as actually being a milder purveyor of evil than Dick Cheney. I think that was helpful for getting into the part. You could also make a case for Dick's wife, Lynn, as the person to blame for the futile and damaging turns that the so-called war on terror has taken. If she hadn't threatened to leave the hard-drinking, aimless young Dick because his behavior was starting to remind her of her own parents' terrible marriage in their native Wyoming, then he wouldn't have been scared into shaping up, promising never to let her down, and he wouldn't have been an intern in Washington, D.C. under the tutelage of Donald Rumsfeld, and he wouldn't have learned to subvert the letter of the law so completely while leaving very little in the way of evidence. A few years ago, Adam McKay made the brilliant and deeply entertaining The Big Short about the subprime meltdown in 2008, also with a perfect cast. He has got a gift for making potentially dull information pop off the screen, and this portrait of Dick Cheney is what absolutely zero interest in the common good looks like.
Okay, we'll take a look at Christian Bale as a slightly toad-like Dick Cheney, rewriting his job description for George Bush.
I sense that you're a kinetic leader. You make decisions based on instinct.
I am. People always said that.
Yeah. Very different from your father in that regard. Now, maybe I can handle some of the more mundane jobs, overseeing bureaucracy, managing military, energy, foreign policy.
That sounds good.
Now, McKay really takes the move in movies seriously. This tale zips along, often almost faster than we can keep up, but that's great. He brackets the story by reminding us that most Americans, after working hard for probably less and less money, don't really want to buckle down with deep analysis of what's going on in the world around them. They just want to blow off steam, drinking or dancing or watching reality TV. McKay, who has long worked with funny guy Will Ferrell, who's a producer here, does some absolutely brilliant things with the structure of the film, which, by the way, almost jokingly ends right in the middle.
Okay, well, let's take a listen now to the director, Adam McKay, and why he wanted to make a film about Dick Cheney.
He's a character who loves to hide in the shadows. He's a character who also changed history in a giant way. Some people know that, some other people don't. And we just felt like we wanted to depict that.
So I mentioned that I feel that he looks a bit toad-like in this role. Christian Bale gained a lot of weight, didn't he?
He certainly did. He's doughy. He occupies space in a very specific way. People often ask me how you can know whether a movie is likely to be good, and I would say a near infallible indicator is if Christian Bale's in it, it is probably good. If you've never seen it, look up The Mechanic, for which Bale dieted down to scary skin and bones. Here, I think he gained something like 60 pounds. He's a maleficent intellect in this dumpy body, and his heart is charred black, black, black. Cheney prayed to repeat heart attacks, really a lot. Should have been dead 10 times over. There's a joke I like in Hollywood, which I think also applies to Washington, D.C. How can you tell who your real friends are? They stab you in the front.
Okay, well, next to a movie on French screens based on a true story about drug addiction. It's called Beautiful Boy, and it stars Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet as a father and son whose relationship is tested and tested and tested.
And tested. Drugs are very powerful, but, you know, so is film. A poacher in Missouri was recently sentenced to have to watch the film Bambi at least once a month for the year he will be spending in prison for illegally killing a lot of poor defenseless deer. I think it might be effective to tell people that being addicted to crystal meth is very much like being forced to sit through this movie over and over again for the rest of your life. Over 70,000 Americans die from drug addiction each year, 49,000 of those from all-powerful opioids. These are harrowing statistics, but the true story recounted here just isn't that interesting. Carell plays a successful magazine writer who, when his son is 18, learns that the kid has been gobbling drugs since he was 12 and is now seriously addicted.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the father and son under uncomfortable circumstances.
I've been doing some research.
Been doing fucking research? You gotta be kidding me, Dad.
You think that you have this under control. And I understand how scared you are.
I understand why I do things. It doesn't make me any different, all right? I'm attracted to craziness, and you're just embarrassed because I was like, I was like this amazing thing, like your special creation or something, and you don't like who I am now.
Yeah? Who are you, Nick?
This is me, Dad. Here, this is who I am.
There are a lot of much better movies about the dangers of drugs, some of them really outstanding. Gus Van Zant's Drugstore Cowboy, Jerry Schatzberg's The Panic in Needle Park. I have never forgotten at a film festival 30 years ago, a young filmmaker described to me what it's like to ingest crack cocaine. He said it was the most sublime, overwhelming rush of bliss he had ever experienced, and that in experiencing it, you fry the very nerve endings that make it possible to ever feel that good again. And so you're always chasing a high that is by definition out of reach. These are wonderful actors and harrowing situations, but I just didn't care.
Okay. Okay, well, that's Beautiful Boy, not such a beautiful film, apparently. On to another true story now. 40,000 people apparently go missing in France each year, which is a staggering statistic. And 10,000 of those disappearances remain a complete mystery. A new French film by a first-time director is based on a murder trial that made the headlines in 2010. Tell us about Conviction.
Well, I hadn't heard of the Viguier case, but this film is scrupulously based on true events, except for one made-up character who is the invaluable technique for getting us into the contours of this rather dazzling true story. On the night of February 27th, 2000, Suzanne Viguier, a mother of three, vanished. Her husband, law professor Jacques, was the primary suspect in the presumed murder, although no body was ever found and there was no apparent motive. 9 years later, the case came to trial, and the exceedingly mild-mannered Jacques Viguier is acquitted by a jury. But for some reason, the state decides to appeal the decision to be heard in 2010, and that's where the made-up character Nora, a chef in a restaurant in Toulouse and a single mother to a young boy, enters the picture. She wants hotshot Parisian lawyer Eric Dupont-Moretti, played by Olivier Gourmet, to defend Viguier at the retrial. She harbors the intimate conviction of the original title that Viguier is innocent. Nora, obsessed, carves out the time to listen to 250 hours of tapped and taped phone conversations involving the missing woman's lover.
Okay, well, France 24 spoke to Belgian actor Olivier Gourmet about how he prepared to play a brilliant lawyer with a national reputation.
I left with him in the morning in the car. I followed him all day, really listening and observing him, his mannerisms, how he moved, how he expressed himself, and even when he didn't have the floor, how he eats, drinks, smokes.
On se demande comment un meurtrier hitchcockien aurait pu laisser le sac à main de sa femme alors qu'il suffisait de le jeter. On se demande si le sac n'aurait pas été déposé. Enfin, tout ça, ce sont des suppositions.
Je crois pas qu'il est rentré. Faites-moi écouter.
Non, après. Ce n'est vraiment pas le moment de m'interrompre.
On va le faire écouter en direct.
Je n'ai pas terminé mon questionnement, Monsieur le Président. Madame, vous êtes un témoin capital. Pardonnez-moi une dernière fois, sous la foi de votre serment, vous jurez que Durandet n'est pas rentré avec vous?
One of the things I like about this movie is you really have to pay attention, and part of what's fascinating is that a retrial isn't about solving the crime or figuring out what actually happened. It's about making sure that a man who was acquitted the first time doesn't get convicted the second. In the Anglo-Saxon judicial system, jurors are asked to go beyond a reasonable doubt about their verdict, and in the French system, they're asked to have an intimate conviction.
Wow. We haven't got time to discuss what that means right now. Re-released this week in France is a restored print of a film that made a deep impression on your young psyche. Tell us about Tommy.
Well, Tommy, based on the rock opera by the group The Who, is one of the most outrageous films ever committed to celluloid. When it came out in 1975, it was the first movie that I ever went back to the theater to see 3 times in 2 weeks because I just couldn't get enough of it. Roger Daltrey, lead singer for The Who, then as now, stars as Tommy, who after witnessing a traumatic act of violence as a child becomes psychosomatically deaf, dumb, and blind. As compensation, he boasts this kinesthetic sense that makes him unbeatable at pinball. He's a pinball wizard. His wicked Uncle Ernie sexually molests him. Tina Turner seems to be made from orgasmic sinews as the acid queen. Elton John is filmed from on high, very high, and Anne Margaret, in one of the most damning portraits of consumerism ever filmed, is shot from down low, low, low. Eric Clapton is a guitar god, so where do we find him? In church. Record buyers of my generation knew the music by heart. I honestly don't know how it plays at this late date, but flamboyant British filmmaker Ken Russell outdid himself here.
Sounds utterly insane. Lisa, thank you so much. And we're going to leave you with Ken Russell's Tommy. Remember our website, we're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.